Thor Love and Thunder, directed by Taika Waititi, is the newest entry into the MCU, and it's dropping in theaters this Friday, July 8th. In Thor Love and Thunder, the God of Thunder teams up with King Valkyrie, Korg, and ex-girlfriend turned mighty Thor Jane Foster to take on a galactic killer known as Gorr the God Butcher. This is of course the fourth installment into the Thor franchise, making him the first MCU character to have 4 solo entries. Now, I was very much looking forward to this movie as I really loved Thor Ragnarok. I thought that was such a breath of fresh air into the Thor franchise, one of the most rewatchable and fun entries into the entire MCU. Now, that being said, I quite enjoyed Thor Love and Thunder. This is a very fun and exciting film filled with that signature Taika Waititi humor, great emotion, and heavy drama. It's a film with some really high highs, but I would also say that it's one with some surprisingly low lows, making it one of the more inconsistent films in the MCU and a little bit underwhelming overall. Now, let me start with the things that I liked about this movie, and number one is the performances. Everybody in this movie just kills it. Everybody across the board is fantastic. Chris Hemsworth continues to kill it as Thor, bringing new dimensions and layers to the character. His comedic timing continues to get better and better as he's just on point and hilarious in this movie. He really carries the whole film on his back. Tessa Thompson is also a big highlight here as Valkyrie. She steals every scene that she's in, which is also something that could be said about Natalie Portman. She's really great here as her return to the character of Jane Foster. Now, I know you all want to know about Christian Bale, and yes, he's incredible. He's Christian Bale. He's very good as Gorr the God Butcher. He's a very dark and menacing character, but also one that's a little bit playful. He has a human side to him, and he plays it all very well. While I wish that his character was developed a little bit more, which is something I'll get to later, he nails it as Gorr. He knocks it out of the park. It's also great to see the Guardians alongside Thor in this movie. Again, they are fantastic together. Though they aren't in this film a lot, they're not very impactful to the overall story. So much so that I kind of forgot they were in this movie until I was writing my notes. I was like, oh yeah, the Guardians are in this movie. So don't expect a lot of Guardians and Thor hijinks in this movie. That's not what this movie is, but they are in it, and it's great to see them pop up. This movie's also pretty hilarious at times, which you'd probably expect from Taika Waititi. There's some reoccurring jokes in this movie that are just so funny. I was dying laughing. This one is like full-on comedy, especially the first half of this movie is just a full-on comedy. If you thought Thor Ragnarok was a comedy, this one takes it up another level. So if you like Taika Waititi, you like his humor, you like his style, I'm sure you'll like a lot of humor in this movie, though I don't think it landed quite as often as it did in Thor Ragnarok, and maybe as often as I would have hoped. But there's definitely some really funny moments in here. And with that, let's move on to the negatives. Now, there is a lot of fun to be had with this movie. Like I was saying, great performances, some incredible moments, some incredible dramatic moments, some incredible action sequences. But overall, it feels a little bit of an incoherent mess of ideas, tones, messages, and storylines. For a film that's under 2 hours, there is a lot that they're trying to cram in here. You have the Jane Foster cancer storyline, her returning as Mighty Thor, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Zeus, Gorr the God Butcher, and I just don't think they effectively tackled any one of these stories in a way that felt fleshed out, earned, or effective. Jane's return kind of felt odd and out of nowhere. The Guardians had very little impact on the story, and Gorr is just severely underdeveloped. I think that they needed to maybe stretch out the runtime a little bit to let each one of these storylines breathe a little bit more, or cut down on some of them and make for a more tight, focused, and effective story overall. Also, considering all of these elements, the movie feels strangely small in scope and predictable. Watching the trailers, you kind of know where this movie's gonna go, what beats it's gonna hit, the arcs that are gonna take place. You can kind of put the pieces together from watching the trailer. And there was no moment in this movie that really wowed me, and I wasn't really left surprised by anything. Another thing about this movie is that it's a Taika Waititi movie through and through. This is full on Taika Waititi, and in many ways that's great, but I'll be honest, it was a little bit much for me after a little while. I never understood the argument that Thor is now too silly, you know? I thought that Ragnarok was a perfect balance of humor, but also effective drama. I think it struck that balance perfectly. And I don't think this one strikes that balance quite as well. I found that it went a little overboard on the comedy, and it became a little too comedic, a little bit too self-aware. So much so that it felt a little bit like a parody of Thor instead of a Thor movie in and of itself, if that makes sense. So overall, when it comes to negatives, I just don't think it's as much of a cohesive whole in regards to comedy, VFX, story, tone, as I would have hoped. It feels a little disjointed and a bit all over the place. Okay, now sounds like I'm hating on this film. I'm really not. There's a lot of fun to be had here. I'm sure that if you go to see this movie this weekend, you'll have a great time. I think your enjoyment level will largely depend on how much you like Taika Waititi's style, how much you like this version of Thor, this more comedic and parody-ish version of Thor. If you're able to just accept the silliness of it all, I think you'll have a really good time. Again, this is a movie that didn't blow me away by any means, but it's still a solid entry into the Thor franchise and into the MCU overall. And with that, I'm gonna give Thor Love and Thunder a 7 out of 10. Alright, that's it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell notification icon so you don't miss any of our uploads here on iCrave Network. Let me know down in the comment sections what you thought of Thor Love and Thunder once you get a chance to see it, and I will see you in the next video. See ya.